Hello, my name is Cornell Green, and I am the Failure Guy. Welcome to the podcast. On this episode of the Failure Guy podcast, my guest is Regina Rossi of Here For You Coaching. Regina, thank you for joining us, and welcome to the conversation.
Hey, Cornell, thank you so much for having me this morning. I'm so excited to be here. I'm really excited to dive deep into this conversation.
Yes. So I'd like to start by just having you tell us a little bit about yourself and your company, and by way of introduction.
Sure. So I am Regina Rossi through business and my whole entire life growing up. I'm happily married for the past 13 years.
Mm.
And my husband's last name is Lamothe, so I'm Regina Rossi Lamothe. I am a mother of a 7.5-year-old amazing daughter who we adopted at birth. And I'm proudly to say that I will be 56 next month. And I started Here For You Coaching, exciting enough to say, in 2024 now, 4 years ago. And so I am a vitality and empowerment life coach, and I work mostly with moms and mom entrepreneurs to support them in harmonizing the life work balance and having the life that they want now by putting themselves first unapologetically.
Okay, now that sounds fascinating. So before we go a little further, say a little more about that.
So yes, I would have to say that, as someone who became a mom later on in life, there's a whole different experience of being a mother when you are, I would say, younger, and then on top of it, single mother versus a mother who's in a relationship, and then, of course, then being there is work no matter what, right? Our overall job is being able to ensure of making sure our children are safe and happy and educating them and, ensuring that they are getting to fulfill on the life that they desire and want. And having that work-life balance, right? I'm somebody who has not just one business. Here For You coaching is one part of it. I have a whole bunch of parts that go under Here For You. So being able to be a mother, to be a wife, and to be who I am all the time and have that all, I don't want to say balance. I like to harmonize it. I think of it as a symphony. If you're listening to music, music's one of my favorite things. I know you love music as well, that there are times when the music gets really intense and loud, and then it gets really
Mm.
soft. And there are notes that are much more stronger while the other ones are faded off into the background. I feel like that's life.
Yeah.
And I feel that that's life with my particular niche of moms, right? And mom entrepreneurs. There are
Yes.
times where the kids are the loudest part of that, symphony. And then there are times that, the relationship, whoever you're with, if it's friends, if it's family, if you're in a relationship, that gets louder. And I would say the one that I really focus on the most is self,
Mm.
because that inner internal dialogue is the one that is the loudest, that little voice in the head. And so I've worked a lot in the beginning on mindset, because that's the one that I feel like is the conductor of our lives.
Okay. Well, it's interesting because recently, I'd say within the past year, I've sort of come to the reckoning that I don't even like the term work-life balance
Yep,
because I feel, hold up a second, what part of your work isn't part of your life? Everything
exactly.
is part of it. So it's not like, oh, there's work, but no life. I'm not living here. I'm just working. What are we even talking about there? Everything is part of my life. So as you say, it's not even so much like a balance as a harmony, as to sometimes certain parts of the score come up. Sometimes there's just the solo. And I think, as you said, that solo line is always you.
Yes.
Sometimes there's duets, sometimes there's harmony, sometimes there's chords. But when there's only one single melody playing through, that's always me.
Yep.
And that's so interesting. That's such an interesting insight. And thank you for sharing that. Because as you know, when most of my friends out of high school were starting a career, I was tramping around on the Jersey Shore trying to be a musician. So yes, music was a significant part of my life in my 20s. And I find it interesting. That's a very interesting metaphor to looking at things rather than the work life. Because I think when we say work life balance, we confuse people and we put
Hmm.
them into the thing like, okay, while I'm at work, I'm supposed to what be holding my breath, and I just got to get through this last 45 minutes. I can get back to living again, and I think that's why so many people are so miserable. With their, it's not that they don't like their jobs, but when they think of their jobs as at opposition to their life, I think that's also why a lot of people accept really unconscionable conditions at work because they think, well, I'm supposed to balance it out. It's like, no, you're not supposed to accept anything that works counter to your life. That's just unacceptable. I mean, obviously, you still have bills to pay, but not at the expense of your life's blood. Come on, that's ridiculous.
And I think you said something really important, which even brought a deeper insight for me. Because we tend to put ourselves in boxes, right? Even the way I spoke,
Mm,
right? It was Regina the wife, Regina the mother, Regina the entrepreneur, Regina the life coach. And you're correct. Like, listen, there's nothing wrong with that, right? Like at the end of the day, that's how we've grown up. That was the conversations that have been what I like to say ingrained and inherited into
yes,
our DNA. Nothing wrong with it. But as we get to grow up and have adults and be able to be in conversations like that, and both you and I really are committed and, love adding, personal growth and development into our lives, that's where you start to realize, wow, I speak and I live in like these little boxes. I really love what you said, where there's no life work, right? So it's a harmony. Now, I
yes,
just wanted to distinguish as a particular coaching part for myself that, you know, there's the word work, which is everywhere, right?
yes,
If you're, and again, I'm speaking specifically into motherhood, so many people have different conversations around that. And some of those are like, hey, being a mom is a full-time job.
yes,
That's my
yes,
work. And 100%, right? You get it. I get it.
yes,
Not the whole world talks about that. So that's where I kind of put that distinction of moms,
yes,
mom entrepreneurs, because we are that whole, whatever that work is,
yes,
inside our world, and inside that life. But you're right. It's one life. We are one person with all of these extraordinary experiences and actions that we're taking in our
yes,
life. I'd love to have that more harmonized and get to kind of take apart and see, like you were saying, those solos, those,
yes,
duets, those notes,
yeah.
those harmonies. Very
And
similar to you.
there are
Yeah.
facets and components of
Hmm.
our lives as things go on. Like again using the musical metaphor. I was a multi instrumentalist, and sometimes I'm singing lead. Sometimes
Hmm.
I'm singing backing vocals to someone else singing lead. Sometimes I'm
Yes.
playing my primary instrument, the bass guitar, but sometimes I'm jumping on stage and I'm just blowing a little blues harmonica while somebody else is playing. It's all me doing all of those things, but
Yep.
what role am I playing based on what is needed of me in that particular time? So
Yep.
you're always mom, but when you're at work, you're being the role at work, and then you're being mom.
Yes.
And something else that you pointed out, just significant to me, you pointed out that it's a different aspect to be a parent later in life. Now you said 56. I'm like, I'm your child, but I'm only kidding. I'm only 7 years older than you. But the thing that cracks me up, I tell people, because a lot of people who know me, they know that I very much love children, and you've heard me speak of my grandnephew, who I affectionately
Hmm.
named Knuckle Bunny, the joy of my heart. And somebody says, "Oh well, Cornell, you'd be such a great father." It's like, "Yeah, that ship has sailed." It's like, "Oh, but And then they go, "A man can have a child at any time." It's like, please, please stop. I am 63 years old and very, very single, more single than I care to be. So if I were to meet someone and fall in love today, we're not spawning the first, what, few months that we know each other. Are you mad? So we'd have to know each other a few years to know that I'm not crazy, she's not crazy, we're not going to make each other crazy. So I'm going to be, what, 66, 67 before? No, 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 no. There is a reason that biology has designed it, that you're supposed to start that in your second or third decade of life, because it takes a lot of energy to raise a child. My mom had four kids, God bless her, and I was quite surprised when I came home from high school at 15 years old and discovered that she was pregnant with my youngest brother, because the brother after me was 11, and you kind of figure, okay, my sister's 17, I'm 15, 11. You figure after more than a decade, it's a closed loop, and it's like, wait, what? What? But how's that? Seriously? And you're just thinking of it as the three of us, and so that
Hmm.
was like, I was like, wow, that's how's that going to work? Of course, I love my youngest brother, who's kind of funny. I mean, because I'm 63, so he's 15 years younger than me. That puts him at what, 48? And I distinctly remember the Thanksgiving. I used to refer to as my younger brother and my baby brother because he was literally a baby when I was, I
Yeah.
burped him, I changed his diapers, I put him to sleep by resting his ear on my heart. He's now 6 feet tall, and like I say, I look up at my baby brother, but he looks up. But so we're having Thanksgiving dinner, and I said baby brother, and he kind of harumphed, and I was like, okay, yeah, I guess it's time for us to lose that baby thing. So now it's my younger brother and my youngest brother
Yep.
because he might always be my mother's baby, but he's not a baby in any other way of fetching that. But so that's very interesting. So and as I said,
Well, I
my
want to,
mom.
before you ask me anything, I want to you know me well, Cornell, so I'm somebody who doesn't step over anything, right? So you had this beautiful conversation about, you know, people saying, well, you're sharing your age at 63 and you're saying that at this point in time, that sale has shipped. And as someone who, again,
Yes,
yes, I focus on women, but like I've also coached men, it's all a conversation. So we can look at biology and we can talk about biology. Men can, be able to support someone in creation their whole entire life, right? The sperm can do what the sperm can do and help any woman become pregnant. And also at the same, so there are men who are 70 years old, right? Who get married and marry someone 30s, 40s, even 50s, women can still
yes,
get pregnant and choose that.
yes,
My particular value system is
yes,
it's a choice and a conversation, right?
yes,
And so that's one. So when you say the ship has sailed, it's just based on a conversation and based on something that you're looking at it that you're saying in your
yes,
life.
yes. And
Now,
I am not saying it as any sort of a pronouncement. Men
no, no,
out there
no.
who are in their 60s who want to have a family,
Yes.
feel please with all my blessings. However, like I could take up free mountain climbing, but I'm not going to.
Right.
Okay, and
And I
that's
think that's the
that's what
big
I'm
part.
saying. Yes,
Knowing yourself. Oh my
yes,
goodness, that's like a whole different ball game.
yes.
And that's what I mean about like when you're saying like being an older mother. So number one is I didn't have my daughter. I
Mm,
adopted my daughter. My biology and how I was made is by the age of 40 and attempted to try to have kids with my first marriage in my
mm.
30s, and it didn't happen, and then got divorced. And then in my 40s, when I turned 40, went into full menopause. So I was already
Wow.
going through the premenopause prior. Now, I myself am adopted.
Okay.
So all of that, I don't have a background, right? Like I don't have a background of like, hey, I don't know who my birth mom is. I don't know who my birth father is. I don't have that information back
Right.
then. All of that was closed. So, I have to take my body as my body is at every moment, at every time. It's all mine, and I get to explore and discover that. So at 40, I went into full menopause. By 43, over and done with. And very similar to you, the conversation was that ship has sailed
Mm.
to physically have a child. And I absolutely came to peace with that. I was married once before, beautiful stepson, had that experience of being a mother, extraordinary opportunity. That whole relationship made it so beautiful. To this day, I'm super close. I still call him my stepson, even though I'm not
Mm.
married, right?
Yeah.
He's my godson. I was blessed to get to be his godmother when I was married.
Mm.
And, but he's that. But like,
Okay.
same with you, right? Inside of failure, inside of many people's conversation, and I'm using that, what you said as that ship has sailed. And I'm clear, I know what you're saying, but I'm going to
Yeah.
talk to the audience. For many people, you can hear that as some type of like failure, right? That
Mm,
could occur as many people as, well, that ship has sailed for me.
right.
And here's all the reasons why. And here's all the excuses why. Without really, I call that a decision. They decide because anything that ends with IDE cuts off all possibility. It cuts off life, pesticide, genocide, homicide, suicide, all ends life. So when you decide, coming from that kind of language and mindset, it's like, well, that ship sailed, and then here's all the reasons why, right? But when I choose, when I hear you in
Mm,
the way you speak, when
yes.
I choose to say that as I look at all of my life, and at this point, I'm saying for myself where I am at 63, I am completely whole and complete, and I get to be a
Yes.
father in so many ways.
Yes.
And then there's all those ways, right? So I want to say
Yes.
that because I want to talk about the failure of at 40 meeting my husband now
Yes.
and being very clear when we met that we are not going to physically be able to have children,
Right.
right? And I had to go through that whole experience
Mm.
of, most women don't have complete menopause by 40.
Guys, I was going to say I was kind of quite surprised that that's
Yeah,
very early.
early. It is. And then by like completely 100%, like 43, like got the full news, like eggs are gone,
Right.
everything's gone, there's not. Right.
Wow.
And so I went through those spaces.
Right.
I was at that time completely like I am till this moment of my life, but at 40, I was completely, 100% into my personal growth and development. I was
Right.
in, leadership training, all like, so my mindset was complete from a choice of love and acceptance of everything that, happened in my life. And sure,
Right.
what first was I sad? Did I go through that failure? Like, where was I at
Mm.
failure in my life that, like,
Right.
God, like, now is having me go to menopause at 40 and
Yeah. Like,
like
what's up with that? You know?
right, this relationship didn't work. And so maybe, there was all of that. And there is in my own mindset and in my own heart, I wanted to be a mom. And
Mm.
I was a mom. I
Right.
was but you hear my words, was, because like that
Ah.
relationship ended and it
Right.
was like
And the
no
connection wasn't.
longer. But that's not
Yeah.
the truth. Let me tell you, inside
Mm.
of failure, that's not the truth. That
Mm.
is, so I want to get into like this failure conversation. Do you
Yes.
mind?
No, no, and before we go into the, I just want to
Yeah.
touch on a couple of things.
Yeah.
First of all, as you know, inside the Failure Guy podcast, and why I'm here, what I'm looking to do is to redefine and to destigmatize and demystify failure. I
Yes.
have failure be an acronym that stands for first attempts in learning
Yes.
using real experience. So I don't
Yes.
define it as any sort of defeat or loss or deficiency or insufficiency in a person. Now, having said that, and again, this I also want to say to those watching and listening out there in podcast world, this is why I don't have pre-interviews with my guests, and a lot of the guests so far inside this relaunch are people that I know and know quite well. But the things that we're going to discuss, we don't pre-discuss. So I'm always learning new things about this. Like I did not know that you were adopted. And I did not know this about your having experienced menopause at such an early age. And I just have to say that that is something that, look, let's just be honest, inside of the context of this society and this culture that we're in,
Yep.
women are tend to be defined by their fertility.
Yep.
Let's face it, their beauty
Yeah.
and their fertility. So to be at such a young age and to be, menopausal and infertile, that had to have an effect. I mean, I know the person that you are, you're a strong person. I know you didn't let that lay you low permanently, but it had to have an
Oh,
effect on you.
100%. I would say that, like I was saying to you prior, at that point when that happened, I was already, very deeply involved in my own personal growth and development journey. So I had my own coaches. I was in a leadership training program. And I was really like at, and still am at that point in the life of flipping, everything from a learning experience. I'll go back to when I was in my 30s, got married at 30, which again, let's go straight into society like you're talking about. This is ingrained, right? It's ingrained. I love my parents. They're no longer alive. I love them, and I'm not blaming them, but the conversations I grew up in were, you're almost 30. You're
Yeah.
not married?
Yeah.
You're almost 30. I was always in a relationship, right? Always in a relationship. And it's just interesting how perspectives happen. So I had a high school sweetheart. That person wanted to get engaged and get married. Like we were going to get engaged at the end of, well, he wanted to be engaged after I graduated high school and then have me go through 4 years of college because we were together all through high school and get married. Now, interesting enough, my parents were like, wait a minute, like go off to college. I was the only one out of my siblings who went to college, including my parents. My dad dropped out of school when he was in sixth grade. My
Wow.
mom graduated, you know, high school. My brother dropped out in 10th grade. My other brother did graduate high school, did a year or two at community college. So I was the one who knew what she was going for and going for those degrees. So she wanted, they both wanted me to, go through college. So interesting enough, they were like, okay, this is meant to be,
Mm.
but like, let's not put the pressure of engagement. Just
Right.
you've made it through high school, you're going locally, let's see what happens, right?
Right.
And what happened was I went to college and explored a whole other different world and
Mm.
wanted to like kind of breathe.
Right.
And that relationship ended. Now,
Right.
interesting enough, as life went on, by 30 was the like, well, when are you getting married?
Right.
Like, when
Right.
are you getting married?
Because
Time,
culturally, a woman who's unmarried at 30 is an old maid.
and biologically, if you're like you're saying, let's talk about reproduction, there is the beginning of the
Yeah.
fertilization. And because I don't know much about my own body through the
Right.
biological what's there,
Right. And then the
it's sort
lineage
of
and
like,
all that. Yeah.
yeah, your cousin Vinny, right? One of your favorite movies, the
Yeah. The
biological
biological
clock
clock
is
is
ticking,
ticking over here.
right? Well, that's just the conversation that was brought up. Now, my mom, she's my mom, my adopted mom, but she's my mom, had went through 5 miscarriages
Wow.
before they went to their first adoption and the second and the third. So little do you know growing up, you don't kind of like know all of this until you start unpeeling those onions when you get into like your therapy, or for me, it was like, personal growth and development courses, where it's not their fault. It's just what was brought up. So all of her 5 miscarriages, and now I'm turning 30, was like that, like sort of that, like, please, let me fulfill on her dreams, right? Let me
Mm.
fulfill on something that didn't happen for her from a
Right.
biological standpoint.
So you can kind of be her legacy in a way.
Yeah. Yeah. And well,
Wow.
exactly. Right. Like, and you don't know that, right? We got to discuss this way before my mom passed away. But like all of that pressure is there. And then, of course, I get married and we try to have kids. And we both didn't realize that, but it's there. It's that
Mm.
blind spot hidden, in the
Yeah.
back of your brain. And so, pressure and trying to have kids didn't happen. And then boom, that ended. And then here I am, like at 40, going through the next part of my life. And including when my mom was passing away, we had her
Mm.
home with my husband now. It so like cracks me up because I could see it like yesterday. She held mine and Josh's hand and she was like, please tell me you guys are going to have kids. Right.
Wow.
Yeah. And like, I wish Josh was here because we honestly met with him knowing I'm not physically having kids.
Mm.
He's younger than me. He was very clear that he was not attached to being a father or having kids.
Okay.
And so we had a very specific relationship that had a very specific vision. And we're both like, okay, because the woman's dying, right?
Yeah.
and by the way, I'm not telling people to lie to their, hello, listeners,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
follow the journey. But like, if we were just like, okay, like from that standpoint, but
Yeah.
it wasn't in our plan. So that next layer that you're talking about after she passed, where although I had coaching and counseling and all of this surrounded, there was that next feeling of
Yeah.
failure, right?
Yeah.
That failure. Like I'm going to fail my mom. I'm going to fail. Like, so when you do things, like when you say so I love why you called your show what you called it, because it is a very specific mindset in
Yes.
my world. It is a mindset. And yes, it's out there and it's been proven, and you can look that up and all of this stuff, but it's a mindset.
Yeah.
And it's a powerful mindset. I like to call it a growth mindset, an elevated mindset. It's a wonderful mindset. Not, it takes something to get to that mindset. So I
Yes.
noticed that deep kind of not growth mindset, that
Yes.
limited, like going down that kind of, rabbit hole of depression, not sadness, because everybody, we have
Yes.
feelings and emotions, right? There are thermometers, they tell us everything. So, yes, to feel something, to feel sad, to feel disappointment, all of that. But it went to that kind of
Yes.
deeper level. But I
Yes.
surround myself, and you know me well enough, and that's why we're here together, that I surround myself in communities that
Yes.
empower and support people in these type of conversations.
Yes. And I
Bring
like to say about depression versus sadness that if you could be sad during depression, you would be feeling anything. And depression is kind of like a void of any sort of feeling,
Yeah,
or it's like a black hole
yeah.
inside yourself. And I'll be honest, full disclosure, I used to be one of those people about depression.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the matter with those folks? Why don't they just snap out of it? Get over it. Come on. Until
I get
I
it.
experienced a 3 year depression that absolutely debilitated me. I literally couldn't work. I was agoraphobic. I could sometimes barely come out of my sister's basement. And thank God for my sister, because I lived in her basement for almost 3 years, and nobody ever knocked on and say, "Dude, when are you going to get your act together?" I honestly, I don't think I could have survived if it wasn't for that. So you talk about
Mm.
communities of support and families. And it's
Yeah.
interesting because on her deathbed, my mother asked me to keep the family together.
Mm.
And yeah, she was the hub that combined all the spokes. And I knew as she was
Yep.
asking me that, it's like, Mom, you know that when you go, you're what was holding us together. A lot of us only know about what the others are doing through you.
Yeah.
So as much as I would like to, of course, I didn't say this to her,
Right.
but as much as I would like to honor that, it's not going to happen. And of course it didn't. And I'm not going to lie, the first few months after her passing, I was kind of bummed about that because I wanted to honor my mother's dying wish of me, dying ask of me. But I had to quickly just say, yeah, Cornell, but you know that it's not any fault of yours. Your kin are who they are. And the ones that are going to keep in touch with you are going to keep in touch with you. The ones that aren't. The ones that aren't going to keep in touch with each other, there's nothing you can do about that. You know, and you can be miserable for the rest of your life, or you can just take a breath and let it go. And that said, now you mentioned adoption, and again,
Yep.
this is what I love about these conversations. I know your daughter. I know that you love your daughter very much. I did not know until looking over the notes for this conversation that your daughter was an adoptee. So
Yes.
this is something interesting, and I noticed that you wanted to talk about the whole adoption process, and it appears it was quite a process for
Mm.
you guys. And
Yep.
so I'm just going to turn over the mic to you, and
Ooh,
let's talk about it.
nice. Yeah. As we keep on going on this journey, we'll talk about mindset, right? It is a mindset. And so, Josh and I get together, we get married without any like thought about being parents, right? We had a complete vision of having our businesses grow and being able to make a difference and an impact in the world. Um, and then we went on this amazing spiritual journey with a bunch of people from around the world to Peru. And we both came back realizing we wanted to be parents
Wow.
because we both Like, and it was in front of 36 people from around the world in front of a shaman. Like
Okay.
it was in front of a shaman. But like here you are, when you find something out, right? This
Yeah.
little kind of like peeling off an onion, and there's like a whole other layer, and you're like, oh my goodness, I really want to be a mom. I
Yeah.
want to honor like that for myself. And then
Right.
it
Well,
just happens.
before we go further, let me ask, because this is fascinating. What was it that had you guys come back transformed from like, parenting, it's a thing, but not necessary for us
Oh,
to,
that's
yeah,
a whole other
let's.
podcast. That's a whole other
Okay.
podcast. No,
Okay.
straight up. But just went on this extraordinary 17-day journey with a bunch
Okay.
of people in Peru. Lots of learning, development, transformational work, and
Okay.
spiritual work like that.
Okay. Well,
But from
we may have to do a
yeah,
second conversation.
that's cool. But from Josh's journey and from my journey, we took, although we were both together, we took some separate um, workshops, for lack of a better term, and and went on a different journey, and then we met back like a day later. And it was from there where we really got to uncover some really deep hidden stuff, which was like he really wanted to be a dad,
Mm.
and I really wanted to be a mom.
Wow.
But now, how do we say that to each other? Because now we're married a couple of years, but we both said, like, hey, and it was
So, talking
beautiful. So
about conversations, do you think that you were both kind of having these internal conversations with yourselves, trying to talk yourselves out of your desire of being
no,
parents?
I mean,
Oh,
honestly, no. I
or
mean,
it
and
just
I'd
you
love
just
to like
came back with new
no, it
conversations?
really we met, so the what your and I conversations are, I mean, Josh and I met in, huge personal growth and development, courses that we still are committed to and use and utilize everything and
Right.
have coaches in and all that to this day. There's like we don't not talk about anything.
Mm.
Like
Mm.
anything. So no, even if it's like, sure, there might be a time where, I'm like, babe, are you sure? Like, I was just thinking what it'd be like. And he would just share it. So we always had conversations. We were always never a no. We were like
Ah.
knowing that here we are in our life, here we are in our journey. Really, we want to be together and go on this journey. And whenever it comes up, we'll talk about it. But years go by. Like you said,
Right.
like then there's you're 40, now you're 43,
Right.
now you're 44, right? Like
Mm.
for me, and Josh is 14 years younger than me.
Wow.
Yeah. So you can have a really great conversation with him. And really, but like, so you get toward that time in life, right? Like you just keep on kind of using like, not that I would not be a great mom, like
Right.
not that I wouldn't be a great mom, right? Really looking at, well, where are we at my age, his age, where we are in our relationship, where are we in our businesses? Like it wasn't about money. It was just always like, is this,
Right.
is this like what we like to say, what's missing in our life that would elevate it to the next level?
Hmm.
And we really, it was such a deep hidden blind spot. It really
Wow.
was. It was a deep hidden blind spot. And I would say for me, I can only speak for myself. Really, it was like, I didn't even realize that I sort of like, I would use the word resignation, even though that
Hmm.
might not be the correct word, but I really convinced my mindset that I was good,
Ah.
right? Like, I'm good. Like, I've had these conversations, we've had this stuff, I found this person, I'm good. Like, I'm good,
Hmm.
and he's good, and we're good. And people would always say, sort of like you were saying earlier, people would say, hey, what if and what if and what if. So as I was talking to you earlier, it's those type of conversations where I'm like, well, Cornell, if you can keep on having a conversation and I gave you another perspective and I gave you another perspective and I gave you another perspective, it does have you start to think a little bit, when you're open to those perspectives.
Right.
So those conversations happened, and then some deep spiritual work happened. And that's when it was like, wow, no, I want to be a mom. And like, I want to be your wife and I want to have kids with you.
Hmm.
And he
Okay.
came back from his journey of, he was told by source, right, that sure, he wanted to have kids, but his love for me was bigger than his own wants.
Hmm.
And so that if we chose together powerfully to say no to that conversation, like we're going to put it aside, right? Like done, then we are going to have a funeral for
Hmm.
that conversation. Now, this is like, I know anybody listening, guys, a little woo woo. We can get into this a whole other day, but this is what we got out of it. And
Right.
when that conversation happened, we were like, do we really want to put that to rest? Like,
Wow.
really? So we went back home and we spent the next couple of weeks really letting that marinate and sit with us
Okay.
and discuss that. And we both were like, no, like everything
Ah.
and anything is possible. But we
Okay.
didn't even know that was possible, right? Because we already kind of
Right.
like
You
had
hadn't
that
explored it.
resignation, like
Yeah.
comfortability,
Right.
that
Right.
kind of like comfortability of like,
Yeah.
where are you comfortable? Like, why do I want to rock the
Right.
boat?
Well,
Our
it's funny that
relationship's
you say
amazing.
that this is conversation a bit woo, as you know, and this is like sort of like an inside joke between us. I'm making my
Yes, that's
peace
why I said it.
with with the woo stuff, but I find that a fascinating concept. First of all, is several things. Three things occur to me in hearing what you just shared. First, the deep commitment of a relationship to the extent that here's Josh. He's a young man, perfectly
Hmm.
capable of siring his own offspring with his own genetic code and whatever have you.
Yep.
But his love of you and his commitment to your relationship outweighed that. Which, let's face it, there's a lot of people out there who are so selfishly dedicated to that concept that in some cases it ends up being what, undoes a lot of marriages.
Hmm.
Secondly, I asked earlier if you guys were having conversations with yourself, but actually, as it turns out, it was just that you had never really confronted the not just the option as a concept, but the possibility as a potential
Yes.
reality. And when it's like,
Yeah.
okay, if that's what you want to do, and I like the concept of like then putting it to rest, having like a ceremony saying this is us saying goodbye. Because I mentioned my age, whatever have you. There was a moment in my life when I was about 45, and I was thinking, it's like, wow, because I'm doing the math. It's like, okay, if I had a child now plus 18, and I was a good kid, but I don't know if you know about smart kids. Smart kids are also kind of really stupid, you know. And so I was like, if I had a kid, that 50% of their genetic structure would be me. And I remember just some of the really weird stuff that I did when I was a kid. And the older I get, I just don't know if I've got the stamina to deal with because I didn't have the internet. I didn't have smartphone. I didn't have all of that stuff. And I was weird enough already. These kids, are you kidding me? I'm scared. I'm literally scared to have a kid. But what really stands out to me was at looking at that, okay, we could possibly put this to, wait a minute. Do we really want to put this to it? Do we? You know, no, I don't think we do. And it's more that you had never really looked at it. It wasn't that you said, we're not going to do this. You said, I guess we're good. But then when you had to look at it, are we good? And then rather than just nixing it off as like, whatever, to when you really confronted it as a possible reality, then
Hmm.
came the moment.
And that's, it's really powerful how you said that. Thank you for recreating that. That was really awesome. Because, like, let's be real, it's one of the things that I'm really honest about. We do that in our lives everywhere,
Mm,
like everywhere. And any
yes.
listeners who are listening out there, like, listen, could you be the president of the United States? Could I go and be an astronaut? Absolutely. Are there going to be things that are in the way that it's going to take a lot of actions and a lot of things to do? But it's so easy just to turn around and be like, no. And I think those are not that I think, I'm going to take that back. I know those are the areas that during that time was cleared away. Inside of that journey, I didn't even realize what I didn't even realize.
Mm,
Like those conversations are so hidden because you just go and live life every day,
right.
right? You're just doing what
Right.
you're doing. And you're like, here I am, and I'm happy, and we're good, and we're off to like, go and do this retreat to make a difference over here. And we kind of stay surface. That's what I'm
Yes.
going to say. At the end of the day, surface. Now, you and I met
Yeah.
not in a surface conversation, and we meet weekly to
Yes.
not stay surface.
Yes.
So for those people that are listening that, have done work or haven't, the way that you really get to know self is a minimum of 7 layers deep. That's kind of how I go in my coaching, a minimum of 7 layers deep. I think of like a Mexican dip, right? 7 layers deep.
Now I'm hungry.
I know, me too. That's why I said it. I was like, ooh, I'm a little hungry. But yeah, like deep, deep, deep. Because like once you get to that layer, you don't know. And then you think you know.
Hmm.
And then just when you think you know and you're comfortable in that, it's the next and the next.
Yes.
So the why I circle back from the beginning of choosing powerfully, right? Like
Mm.
choosing powerfully. And I think it's really interesting because people will choose something and, end something. And then like, it's like you cut it off, like, and then that's that. So we choose what we choose at that time and at that moment. And then, like, I feel like society doesn't give any grace and space for
Mm.
people to come up and say again. And that's what I really learned, where it was just like we said what we said. And yes, we've shared it with people. And there's an impact. Bottom line is you open up your mouth and you tell people something. My mom always said that. She's like, listen, if you don't want to get what other people are going to say, then don't say it. Because at the end of the day, you're going to say something to someone and they're going to remember and they're going to support you or not. And then if you keep on, like doing and telling a lot of people, there's a lot of people like to
Yeah.
talk about. And that's okay. But I'm at a stage in my life then and even bigger now that like you can be with it. Like you could say, like, whatever. Like if Lexi's like, no, I don't want to go to camp this year, right? Like,
Mm.
no. And we're not going to camp. It's March 2nd. And we're like, okay. Most parents are like, hey, you're going. You went last year, this and that, blah, blah,
Yeah, you
blah.
gotta
Like,
go and yada yada. Yeah.
camp is until June. Like in my life, like we're now in June, but that's what I learned for now. Like so much from that. Like there's so much space in between even this conversation when we listen back.
Yes.
What was talked about an hour ago, like there's so much space and there's so much more space in between. So that's what I'm really stepping into. And like we gave ourselves that grace. That's what we got out of that. And then we got the support systems and got into conversations with people
Yes.
who are into that to make that choice.
Yes.
Now, now, big part is, and I'll
Yes.
never forget the judge. The judge turned around, and I will never forget this. So when we adopted Lexi, I'll do something really quick for you. So when you adopt a child here in the state of Florida and many states, so the paperwork is signed legally. The parents have given up their rights legally. We've been cleared. Everything else, she's home with us. Technically, she's not officially your daughter, you are the foster parents of that child.
Hmm.
Because then there is a time where you are the judge, you meet with the judge, and it's only based on court dates, really, like what's
Right.
available. But it's about 6 months. It's not like the parents can turn around in those 6 months and change, their mind. They
Right.
technically can, but they'd have to say like there was this whole big, you know, um,
Right.
problem.
They
And
were under
that's
duress or something.
yes, and
Yada
all
yada
of that
yada.
stuff.
Yeah.
And that's a whole other different story. And that does happen and whatever.
Yeah.
But everything worked the way beautifully, the way it was meant to work. And everybody was supported and ensured that the choices they made, there was no coercion. Everybody was clear, right?
Right.
So now you've just got the child and you, caseworkers just checking in to make sure everything's good. And then they write reports and they send them to the judge. And in a couple of months, judge comes and they do this beautiful, what we like to say, ceremony, like if you were
Right.
getting married. So
Okay.
6 months goes by. Lexi's born on October 10th, 2016. We are there that same day. And we get to take her home 11 days later, only because we were in another state. So we had to wait for that legal state time.
Okay.
And so she was with us, right? Like left the hospital. We had a place to live, all that stuff. 11 days later, we're legally back in Florida. And technically, in the world, she's our foster child, even though
Right.
we know she's our daughter.
Right.
March 10th or 8th. So that 6 months later, we go to the judge. And the judge says this to us: before I grant you to be parents, because I read your reports, I read everything, this is beautiful, so on and so forth. But I want you, my aunt and uncle were there to witness this. I want you to understand that you cannot, once I sign these forms, I'm not going to allow you to bring her back here.
Mm. Mm.
And we laughed. We laughed. We were like, ah, like I was like, and then he goes, no, I'm serious.
Mm. Wow.
Because he said the commitment that this is,
Yeah.
like we're talking, like, remember I told you, I'm being space and grace and ease, and all this stuff. Like he shared how it's happened. And
Wow.
as a judge,
Right. No backsies. There's a no return
exactly,
policy
no,
here,
that's
baby.
like, and he's like, and they have.
See, this
And
is never would have
yeah,
even.
no, dude, I'm like, you're bringing it back for me because I'm like, and why I say that, why I'm saying this, and it was, we laughed, it was beautiful. We literally had to go under oath,
Yeah.
sign the forms, and then we walked away. And it's still a conversation to this day, right? It's still a conversation to this day. She's
I would
7.5.
imagine. Yeah.
Because interesting enough, we took that conversation so deeply, not just for her, but we've been
Yeah.
looking at it in our life
Yeah.
about where do we flip flop and are wishy
Mm.
washy and
Right.
all of that. So, because again, I'm someone who's grace and ease, right? I'm someone who's like, okay, at this moment, this doesn't work for you, right? If she's saying she doesn't go to camp, but there's plenty of time,
Right.
right? And like we want to look at different possibilities and things. And at the same exact time, we're going to commit to something,
Yes.
right? We're going to commit to something. So being a parent full time with a kid, no backseat, with everything else that comes with it, because nothing is at all 100%. Everything and anything happens inside of being a parent, and how is that child going to grow up and how are they going to be, and so on and so forth. Are you willing to be committed? And that is where I would say the newest journey, where we looked at recently, Josh and I talked about when we were like, why we said we're ready to say yes, and why that spiritual journey went. Because it's
Mm.
so on the surface of being ingrained in us to say, go be a mom, go be a dad, go have a kid.
Right.
And most people don't take the full, and I mean, we've only thought what we can think. But the bottom
Yeah.
line is anything and anything could happen,
Right.
and we're still her parents,
Right. And
no
speaking of
matter
which,
what.
it's kind of interesting because as I say, failure in the context of this conversation stands for first attempts in learning using real experience. Now,
Yes.
and I'm sort of glad that you kind of flipped things from the way I would have addressed it, which is you've talked
Mm-hmm.
about the successful
Mm-hmm.
adoption,
Yeah.
but according to my notes here, there was a first attempt
Yeah.
that let's just say that wasn't Lexi.
Nope.
So yeah, let's talk about that.
So I'll go back to even the part of, like I said, the first attempt in learning, do we want to be parents or not? Right? That was the first, because it was very clear we weren't. And then we clear we were. The adoption journey is so sensitive and so fragile. And you can get every bit of information, because when you adopt, and we went through an agency that was well known, and they had a smaller sister agency closer to where we lived.
Okay.
So they were brand new, and we just were like, well, but they're still part of the bigger agency, right? They're still
Right.
part of the bigger agency that's been around for 30 years. They let you know that there are failed adoptions.
Mm.
You sign a form that says they can't guarantee anything. That money is going to be utilized this way. If this failed adoption happens, we take that money and we use it for your next adoption. So
Okay.
right away in the adoption world, failed is there.
Right.
It's called a
Right.
failed adoption, which I love what you were saying, which is to anybody who's listening to see this as a first attempt in learning.
Right. And
Because
then
it's
looking over
not
those notes, I mean, it's obvious once I see it, but it hadn't occurred to me. It's like, yeah, they don't all, usually in all the movies and stuff, it's like, is the child available or this, that. It's like, yeah, sometimes it just doesn't work.
a lot of times for now. So the
Wow.
difference is that it's a lot more failed adoptions before
Wow.
an adoption goes through.
Okay.
Yeah. Because you're really sensitive to, and this is my passion to talk about, to find for us. And so let me back up for a second. 25 years, I've been a licensed master social worker from New York. And one of the jobs that I had for many years was a case manager for children who were in foster care and removing children from homes that were in, you know, not healthy homes, either psychologically, physically, or, emotionally, and then was an adoption specialist. So I have a background in that. And you've not it's not just about the parents who want soon to be parents. It's making sure that the woman, because it's mostly the woman, and and definitely if father's there to make sure that they are emotionally, physically, and psychologically understanding everything that they're doing. Everything.
Okay.
And at the end of the day, every single state has a certain grace period where the mother and the father can change their mind. So even when the forms are signed, meaning terminating the parents' rights,
Right.
they are no longer the parents and are choosing to give up the child to these adopted families, there is a grace period for them to change their mind.
Yeah.
Now, in the state of Florida and in the state of Michigan, there is a 48-hour grace period. Now that kind of sounds like either like, yay, great. As a social worker, I'm like, not enough time.
Right.
As a mother, I'm like, yay. Because somebody who just had a baby is
Yeah.
hormonally going through a whole bunch of things.
Yeah.
And 48 hours, right? You might kind of come out of a fog, as we talked about how people go through, you lost your mom, I lost my mom, like
Yeah.
that. We have feelings and emotions around that. And depending on when the mother comes to the agency or coming to an adoption specialist or coming to a lawyer, most of the time they come much later on toward the end of their birth.
Right.
So we were with a mother from the beginning, right? Like around 4 months of
Wow.
her pregnancy, which
Wow.
is rare, which is rare.
Okay.
And she had already had two children prior. And we got to go through 5 months of taking her to doctor's appointments and then taking her out to lunch with the kids and really getting to know her. We
Okay.
wanted to be a source of support and a source of security to ensure her. We also chose to be what's called an open adoption, which means that she would get to know us and we along the lines would have an opportunity to get to see them in person and grow up in person versus my adoption that was closed, know nothing or anything.
Right.
So it all seems fairy tale and amazing. And along the way, everything was great. And then she had the baby emergency. We went to a doctor's appointment right toward the end. She was due like a week or two later, and we went earlier because she didn't have enough amnio fluid, so we got her to the
Oh.
hospital. And she was safe and she was good and she had the baby, healthy baby. And that next day, we were asked to come in, and that's where then you start the process. And we went in, and it was really a interesting experience because we just had 5 months of being with her almost every
Right.
week. We walked in and she was breastfeeding. And that's a sign as a social
Yeah.
worker
Yeah.
that there's a deep connection. And I felt it in me. But
Mm,
by law, I cannot now cancel this adoption. If I cancel this adoption right then and there, we can be sued because if she's still choosing to adopt, I can cause duress.
right. Right.
And the second day we went, she was great, but I felt it, but she wasn't signing the forms. And the social worker from the hospital came in and she pushed the social worker out. And I saw the signs as somebody
Yeah.
who's done this for a long
Yeah.
time. And I left the hospital saying she's going to keep the baby. And my husband was like, don't put that in the space. And I'm like, she's going to keep the baby.
Yeah. Because
And
you
so
weren't, you
that
weren't just naysaying. You had
I
this was an
knew.
informed
No,
observation.
and then we started getting like texts from our side of the agency that they were asking, now they're going to take him home and they sign the forms. And she's like, I'm not signing the forms. You know, I, I feel like you're forcing me, but for 5.5 months, she knew.
Yeah.
So that, and that morning, my mother-in-law was already on the plane. And that morning, my social worker called us to say that she left with the baby. And by law, since she didn't sign the forms, she
Right.
had 6 weeks to change her mind. And she didn't. And within 2 months after that, the agency folded.
Wow.
So, on top of losing the baby, the agency folded with the rest of our money
So you
because
didn't
they
even
went,
get to apply that to your next.
no, you lost everything. And all the money that, they do a home study and a whole bunch of other things.
Yeah.
All of that now no longer is good because the agency went into chapter 11.
Right. So now you got to
So,
go through all of that all over again.
yeah. And so for most people, because I've not just like, I'm not talking about it, I've spoken to many people that have been through this. Um, it crushes people.
Yeah. Yeah.
So back into the mindset of failure or
Yes.
fail, it's not the first attempt in learning, it's
Yeah.
the expected outcome.
Yes. Yes.
And that is something that I'm blessed to say through all the years of personal growth and development and
Yes.
therapy that is an expected outcome is something that an attachment to that. Like you're so desperately attached to that, right?
Yes.
That like you can't even breathe when it happens because, that's all you have. You have a lid on that. Like that's it. You're gonna be a mom. You're gonna be a dad. You're gonna have a kid again, a kid, a kid, and then it doesn't happen, and all the feelings and emotions and anger and pain and blame over there.
Right.
And trust me, that night, I
Mm.
definitely went through that.
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
husband drove in the car and I screamed and cursed and let it all out from
Wow.
where I went wrong, where they went wrong, like
Wow.
all of that. Like that failure, feeling
Yeah.
like I failed, feeling
Yes.
like that
Yes.
self-esteem. That's where failure comes into that mindset of a
Yes.
self-esteem thing.
Yes.
Amen. Normal people, absolutely 100% normal.
Yes. Well, you
And
raise an interesting distinction, and one of the reasons why I started and I'm relaunching this podcast is I want to bring to light for most people that what we consider as failing and a failure and a crushing defeat. First of all, no one is a failure. Failure is something we experience. It's not something
yep,
that we are. And
yep.
mostly what it is, it's not defeat. It's not a deficit or a deficiency. It's simply getting a result other than the one that we expected or
We
anticipated.
expected. Exactly. And it's amazing how the mind, right? Like kind of like that sounds so simple. And I want people to know I get it. I get it. What Cornell and I are talking about, does not just happen overnight,
Oh
right?
no. Oh
That
no.
concept. So that's why we're here. That's why he's here. That's why he had me on. That's why he has amazing people. There are resources and connections to support people in that. But yes, that was the failure. Now, the interesting part of going back to the first attempt in learning, right? You know, um, and it definitely like through real experience is most people. especially when you lose the money. We're talking
Oh
twenty
my
thousand
gosh.
dollars.
Ooh.
So we're not talking like, and we had already laid out 10 grand prior.
Right.
So that the agency closing, the baby, like all of it, right? We held the baby, we with the mother, like all of that can crush people.
Yeah.
And for Josh and I, it was such a moment to give ourselves again that quiet space and grace and ease to sit to say, how committed are we to continue saying that we want to be parents?
Yeah.
It was back to that same conversation. Now we've un we've unlayered the onion, right? And we're clear, but now we're in just a whole new space. And
Yeah.
many people, and there's nothing wrong with it, need to take time or give up and say whatever. Now, especially if we're going to go back to age thing, for now I'm 48 at this moment.
Wow.
By the time the second one happens, so 40, five on, 47 on the last one, you know what I mean? Like, so
Yeah.
this whole process started at 44, now we're at 48. And it was just that moment, that failed adoption that opened up our heart and gave us more light and
Mm.
energy and a flame to be parents more than ever.
Wow. Wow. So
And
rather
what,
than knocking you guys out of it, it's like, no, 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 no. We
nope,
doing this.
yeah. And we went through the whole, like, trust me, I was sad and I had a couple of days and
Yes,
like,
yes.
you got to go through that. But it was a very short time, like, like it was this healthy grieving process.
Mm.
Most of it was the community being like, okay, let's look at your expectations. Let's look at what was missing. Let's look at like what we can move forward. And so that's what we did. We chose to give ourselves about, we said 4 months. It ended up being two to
Hmm.
really like kind of discover and uncover some of the things and for me to kind of go back and see those signs, right? Like to see those signs, for him to like, for me to educate my husband, because again, this is something I know, right? Because it's very difficult to balance social worker and like
Yeah.
parenthood. And so we did that, and we spent a long time, and we this time around we ended up interviewing a ton of agencies, and not too many, but like the way we crafted our letter to agencies, the responses, because we did it on a weekend. So most agencies, by the way, when you write to them on their website for the weekend, nobody reads it.
Huh.
You get no, they will, especially as your new parent, like we saw this, we're interested,
Yeah.
you would get the response of thank you so much, we'll get back to
Form
you
letter,
on
which
the
clearly indicates we did not pay any attention to the actual letter.
well, right. And that makes sense. So I did it on the weekend, right? So that we can still have more time to process and then have these phone calls. And do you know that 5 agencies that we wrote to, two wrote us back. Like people were reading them that night
Wow. Wow.
and set up phone calls with us. So, you can just see like that type of piece. And then we interviewed them and we shared our story in a much deeper way. And and then we found the agency that we found.
Okay.
And again, there were signs from the other one. The other one was great. They had a smaller satellite. What we
Yeah.
didn't know until the end was that satellite agency broke away from the main agency that's been around for 35 years. So they didn't have all
Oh.
that support and all that stuff. So they were like this brand new agency. And we
Right.
ended up finding out that, our case manager
Yes.
was the same case manager for the birth mother. So that, by the
Ooh.
way,
Ooh. Kind of
is
conflict
conflict
of
of
interest.
interest.
Yes.
All of this
Wow.
happened like boom, 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 right at the end.
Yeah.
Like, da, da, da. So all the signs were there for the
Yes.
failed adoption.
But here's the real experience that
We
informed
learned.
your learning is like, you know what? We're gonna interview the agencies,
Yeah.
okay? Because we need to
Yeah.
make sure that they're on the up and square.
Well,
Wow.
yeah. And it's beautiful, right? So it's all what we learned from that to ensure that we're aligned, right? Like, so like that we're all aligned. And it was really fun because like they didn't even think about some of the things that we even thought about,
Wow.
and that was able to be like, oh, okay, well, thank you. And, and like, move forward and move forward. So it really was an incredible learning process. And I believe that. I truly believe that all of the things that happen in life that I know many of us feel are painful are really such an opportunity to check into our heart, like, and really say, when you feel that type of pain, it shows you how committed you really are,
Yes. Yes.
right? If it's, whatever it is, but at first you got to get through those emotions. And if
Right.
you can just realize that that's a temperature, it's just, you need to release it, it's like you release it, then you get to be like, oh, that
Yeah.
job that you love so much, but you got fired. You could say, oh my God, I was a failure. Or you could sit back once you stop blaming them
Yeah.
and blaming yourself to say, what I loved about that job was who I am in that job. And
Yeah.
so I'm going to look at the next job, so that I get to be more and more of this.
Yeah.
And I'm going to look for more and more of that. And that's what we had. So we got to be in a book about,
Mm.
and the story is, my husband came up with the title, which is brilliant. It's called It's Impossible to Be Impossible.
Wow. I
Because
love
when
that.
you're that committed, and that's why
Yes.
I said what I said to you earlier, when you're that committed, it's
Yes.
just impossible
Yeah.
to say that it's impossible, but it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Um, so I believe in that. I really, truly do. And you could sit there and argue with me about a lot of things and say, well, no, you're not going to be an astronaut, Regina. You're 56 years old. But if I truly have that commitment, right? Truly have that,
Yeah.
I might go through things that don't work out and find out what didn't. And then I learned from that and
Right.
everything else, but I'm clear.
Right.
I'm clear.
Right.
And that's what we really got out of the whole entire journey, was that failed adoption had us completely
Yes.
see everything that's available and possible through the learning of that whole entire journey.
Right. And when you think about it, in order to forge steel into a sword, you've got to melt it, you got to stick it into this impossibly hot, forge, and then you got to take it out and you got to bang it with a hammer, a mallet, so it takes a lot to get the end result. People think it's just going to be sweetness and light and a lot of, I mean, I wish that it was.
Mm-hmm.
I wish that life was all easy with no hard parts, but that's not how life works. Of course, I wish everyone as smooth a journey as possible, but as long as we don't take the temporary setbacks as
Yeah.
defeats, like I say,
Yeah.
failure is only defeat if you quit.
Yeah. Oof. Boom. Drop that one on.
And as long as you keep going, and in fact that's the closing tagline. I mean, we could go on forever, and actually I'm going to have you back, Regina, because there's so much
Oh,
even to discuss, and I really just want to go deeper into a lot of things. But I thank you so much for joining me with this conversation, and I can't wait to get this out there for the people, those of you watching and listening in podcast land. Hope you've enjoyed it. And so I'm going to bring this up on the screen, but also for those who are listening on the audio version, I'll let the folks know how they can get in touch with you.
yes. Thank you so much, Pernell. It's just been a pleasure. Anybody's interested in, just having a conversation with me, if there's anything that, you know, you heard that you want to ask questions about, or just, have a conversation, it is absolutely free. Feel free to reach out to me, to Regina, Regina, at here, HERE, the number four, and YOU, coaching, COACHING.com. That is my email. And feel free to go to my website at www.here, the number four, the word you, and coaching.com.
Okay. Thank you so much, Regina. And, I will see you again next week in our
Yeah.
weekly meeting. And, ladies and gentlemen out there in podcast land, I will see you at the next, episode of the Failure Guy podcast. And remember, as always, failure, as I said, failure is only defeat when you quit. So never quit. Keep running. And I'll see you all next episode.